working relationship with the guy. I get it, okay? But the reality of the situation is this, okay? Black Monday's right around the corner, okay? Will Doug Marrone be a casualty of Black Monday?
I agree. Well, first say this. I agree that you don't want to hear it. And I agree, too, that, there's the humanistic side and there's the coaching side. Maybe the two shouldn't mix in this situation. But I'm still not convinced that he's going to get the axe. And maybe he really doesn't know what's going to happen on Monday. Heck, for all we know, there are 6 head coaches, because usually that's what it is, about 6 head coaches, that get told right after their ball game, hey, you're gone. I'm still not convinced that Marrone gets the axe. And this will be something that we talk about tonight. Do I think we probably should clean house? Yeah. Do I really think that Dave Caldwell should go? Yes. Do I think it's going to happen? I'm still on the fence, Scott, and I need you to tell me why I shouldn't be, because personally I think you should get rid of the general manager and you keep the head coach and see what he can do over a full season without having somebody breathing down his neck.
Yeah, but didn't they do that before they brought in Tom Coughlin, Dave? No, wasn't Tom Coughlin brought in? Hold on. Wasn't Tom Coughlin brought in here with the intent that he had another good football mind in here to go along with Caldwell and Marrone? Didn't they use that before? Didn't he get any answers or information out of the whole thing? That's what I want to know. It's not a trick question. It's something that I want to know. Everybody's talking about one guy ruling the roost, was he two-hand on? But you had these two guys in there before Coughlin was brought in the mix, Dave. That's a question that I kind of wonder in my mind, how much things can change next year with these two guys running the show. Hey, listen, we both know that Shad Khan is a very patient owner. Rudy Reyes and I, on an earlier show, debated the same subject. And, you can't have a coach with tons of insecurities out there standing in front of a podium all the time about what he did wrong, what we got to do differently, and all the things that have gone wrong. Because you know what you're going to have? You're going to have tarps on top of that stadium, and you're going to be reduced to half of what your capacity is at the rate they're going right now. And we have a quarterback situation, which we're going to get into shortly, that's right now up in the air. So they had this dynamic before Tom Coughlin was brought in, David. So why do you go back to it? Or is there going to be a different feel about it in 2020 before there's plenty of good seats available?
Well, how about this?
Okay.
Coughlin was brought in 2017. That's when Marrone was hired as a full-time head coach.
Okay.
Gus Bradley was here before that.
Right.
He coached. Marrone replaced him, I think it was, 2 games at the end of the season. They went 1-1. Coughlin was brought in, and Coughlin and Marrone have had a relationship for years prior to Coughlin coming back to Jacksonville. And he felt that, honestly, Marrone would be the guy that he could work the best with. Now, we can read between the lines. We can put all kinds of, titles on it and whatnot. But you have to think that Coughlin had a major influence on how this team was run the last 2 years.
Right.
He signed off on everything. It was the smash mouth football that he wanted, and he wanted his guy to be able to run his brand of football. From that standpoint, there's a term for that. I don't want to use it because I highly respect the head coach. But, somebody's pulling some puppet strings there. And I'm not saying that, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that Marrone's the right person for this job. And maybe head coaches are better when they're coordinators or better when they're position coaches. And you and I have had that discussion when we were watching games.
Right.
I still would like to see what Marrone can do with changes to his staff. I would like to see what he can do with a full season. I'm not saying he's going to get that, and I don't necessarily think that maybe he warrants it. But I also know that in the end, this is a guy who I really believe thinks he's on the way out after the game on Sunday.
Right. Okay. That's fair. I mean, the bottom line is, I know what I saw at that press conference over in Atlanta. It was ugly.
Yeah, it was.
I don't know, when I was growing up as a kid, one of the first movies I saw was Jaws. I didn't know what was ugly there. But again, why am I bringing Jaws into the picture? Because I tell you, that was ugly. And what we've seen all year is ugly. We saw a team that brought in Nick Foles to take over Blake Bortles. You can't blame Blake Bortles for the problems anymore. And I understand that even though Marone and Caldwell were together on a limited basis on an interim situation. Marone still was an assistant coach with Caldwell. Does that make a big difference? Who knows? But you've got lots of quality candidates out there. You got Mike McCarthy. That ain't good enough. You got Ron Rivera out there. And who knows? Maybe Jason Garrett could become available. There's a guy that works with coaches. And the list goes on and on. And how much does Shad Khan want to go out there and continue to see his team lose when there are other more viable candidates that can develop the most important position out in the field, David, and that's the quarterback position. What is it going to take? Do we need David Copperfield to go ahead and flash his magic wand, abracadabra, alakazam? How are we going to develop a quarterback and a coach simultaneously? You get the drill?
No, I don't. Well, first of all, I agree with what you're saying, and I know that we're animated about it. How about that? Because I've been a little more animated today. I know this to be true, and this is something that I constantly hear in the building.
Okay.
Doug Marone's job is to coach the players. I don't know how much say he has in bringing in those players. I don't know how much say he really had with bringing in Nick Foles. I don't know how much say he had bringing in, Leonard Fournette in the first year. I don't know what kind of say he has and input he has bringing in defensive players. There's been a constant understanding that Dave Caldwell and Tom Coughlin worked together to bring in free agents, sign players, re-sign players, draft players. And it's always been Marone's position to coach them. So then you have the question, is it the player or the coach? Now, I'll tell you right now, Nick Foles wasn't ready to play again. And you know that, and we've discussed that.
Right.
Okay, and we're going to talk about a quarterback controversy in a few minutes, but he was given specific players, and certain players came to play. Josh Allen was drafted and came to play. Jawan Taylor was drafted, he came to play. Calais Campbell was brought in 2017, he was brought into play. A.J. Bouye brought into play. Jake Ryan hurt, they thought he would be okay, didn't pan out. I don't know how much, you look at this, and I called it the Holy Trinity for a while, beginning before the draft, where Coughlin, Marone, and Caldwell were all sitting there talking to the media. And it was going back and forth between Dave and Tom. And Doug was kind of in the middle, just kind of, shaking his head. Every once in a while he'd get a question. But he didn't answer much. It was all the Coughlin show. And you got a real good feel for how the management structure was.
Right.
With the team, and then it's kind of like they're volleying back and forth.
Right.
So I think a lot of that had to do with what's going on this year. So that's why I'm saying maybe he deserves one more year. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I'm saying, but for that reason, maybe he does get another year.
All right, Lewis, what do you got to say?
I got a question to ask you, David, and it's going to kind of tie in together everything that we're talking about.
First of all, how are you doing, Lewis? Because we didn't get to talk to you last week. How was your holiday?
I'm good, man. Yeah, I had a great holiday. Always good to be with the family, but, it's back to work tonight. And that'll lead me to this question. Coughlin was fired for a myriad of reasons. Like you said, and like you and Scott just discussed, he's had probably a pretty large say in, Khan's decision to sign the likes of Foles and, ensure that the team has a solid quarterback, an established quarterback moving forward. But one of the reasons that many speculate that Coughlin was fired, other than the fact that some of these moves that he's made thus far have not panned out in his tenure here, is because of his personality. And like you said, with that press conference you saw, he's a bit abrasive. It's the Coughlin show, like you said. Marone's personality tends to superset that, where it's a little bit different. We were talking about this when we've all read the releases. Marone's apologizing like a kid, who, left the fridge open and the chicken spoiled now or something. I don't know. Can't think of a better analogy.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah, that is not bad, actually. Teaching the kid to think on the fly.
But do you think, given that they got rid of Coughlin, with some speculation surrounding the fact that his personality is not something that relates to a younger core of players in Jacksonville, do you think that has any effect on whether or not Marone stays, given the kind of person that he is and, how players, I won't say respond to him because obviously they're 5-10 right now, but do you think Coughlin's firing, given his personality, adverse to Marone's, influences somewhat whether or not he's here next year with a different coaching staff and maybe has a chance to see a full season of Gardner Minshew and, I don't know, test the waters again to see if Nick Foles is worth $88 million?
I do. One thing that you get in the locker room from various players, and you can walk up to them to a man, and they will tell you, we like Doug. One of the biggest voices this year has been Leonard Fournette, and you know all the issues that Leonard Fournette had with the team last year, with Coughlin, with the front office, not playing. There were questions about the injury and whatnot, but to a man, they like playing for Doug Marrone. He identifies with them. He's not much older than you and me, Scott.
Right.
He's in our age bracket. So,
right.
There's a disconnect. However, he's a genuine guy, and they say the same thing. And I think for that abrasion and that abrasiveness that Coughlin was, because, it's a militant style, and a guy your age, Lewis, really doesn't react to it well. And no disrespect, but it's a different time. You can't take an 80s coach, 1980s coach, and expect him to relate to somebody in their early 20s. It just does not happen.
It'd be like John Madden coaching Pee Wee football.
Well, I don't know about that. All I know is, but you know what? That's an interesting point, guys. Rudy Reyes and I, on one of our broadcasts earlier, alluded to the same point there, Dave. We talk about a much different, an old school guy, and I went on and told Rudy that I didn't think that Tom Coughlin would ever see another front office job, that he'd probably be a consultant at best, but, it'd be a while before he ever does sniff another job because of his latest act. And I don't care. I mean, Shad Khan's the most patient guy on the planet. And to see that his organization, be thrown, get the wrong type of PR, David, to me, is not a good look at all. So
it's really, I know that you're downstate and you read, things, and you watch things that are going on, but honestly, here, it really is not a good look. And I can tell you that firsthand,
right.
how much it is a disaster.
Well, I'm downstate, but upstate enough time to understand what the heck's going on.
Right. But I mean, in other words, you don't see it on the TV every single day.
Right, that's true.
About how it's being affected. Remember, 3 years ago, he was brought in, and everybody thought, "Oh gosh, Tom Coughlin's back. He's going to change the reality of his team. They're going to win." And then they did win, and everybody was like, "Oh my gosh, look, we can do this. We're going to go to the Super Bowl next year." But there were still problems that existed within the organization, and winning cures everything. But I think I said this last week to you too. Winning also blankets everything. That internal problems get swept under the rug. Well, they had a disagreement in the front office. That's not talked about. Jalen Ramsey's pissed off at people. We don't discuss that because we're winning football games. Right. So the cracks, I guess, had already started. During the middle of that championship run. And we just weren't privy to it. Now, granted, we saw a few things every once in a while, inside the building, but you didn't think much of it. And then it started clicking last year. Well, this happened. Oh, yeah, let's go back and talk about this. I don't think everybody was on board with Blake being a quarterback again last year. And,
right.
But hey, they were winning, so they didn't think about it.
Right.
So. The cracks in the walls had already begun long before last season and this season. I'm pretty sure it already wasn't working. It's just some degree.
All right, we got about 10 minutes to go. I'm going to go over some key points, and I only want to go over some key points, that we talked about. First of all, you're saying there's plenty of reports saying that the team owner is going to keep the head coach and GM, but you're still not sure whether that's going to be particularly the case. Is that correct?
Right. Adam Schefter first broke the story that Khan was leaning towards keeping them. This was before the game against Atlanta.
Okay.
I haven't heard anything to the contrary, but I also haven't heard Khan say, yes, I certainly am. I still see there could be a combination where one goes, one stays, both go, both stay. I know that the fan base would prefer to see Dave Caldwell leave than Doug Marrone. That's a given. Given that he's been here through Gus Bradley, and now he's here through Coughlin and Marrone.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, next, Jan Nagakov. Boy, what a butcher job for that name.
Ngakwe.
Oh, whatever. I should have quit while I was ahead with Jan, any more than Giannis Antetokounmpo, though I'm getting better with that name. So what's the deal with this guy?
Okay, so real quick, before the season started, they had worked on negotiations on a contract extension. Ngakoue is one of the most dynamic pass rushers in the NFL right now. If he gets $2.5